Hello everybody and welcome back to Kerbal Space Program, where last episode we took a trip around the moon, or I guess by the moon, not exactly around, and we got a free return trajectory and came on back, and we barely had enough life support. We did not have enough electricity, but it was fine. We managed to recover, and we got ourselves an upgraded VAB, as well as a decent amount of science. So we've got some new technologies set. Now, as far as all of this goes, right, we wanted to rendezvous two vessels in orbit of Kerbal. So for this, I'm not even going to have these be manned, I don't think. I don't think there's a reason to. So we're just going to do very, very, very small satellites. We're going to use a Prototype 9 Octo, and I want to get this just up into a, not the lowest orbit, but a relatively low orbit. So what I'm thinking right now is this is going to be way too big, right? Yeah, even bigger. We want like an Oscar O hemispherical fuel tank here. So this is the vehicle that we're going to be sending, is something like this. And as far as the engines for that go, this would be like the Pug is too big, right? Absolutely it is. We could go for a variant kind of like this. And that kind of works. That has its own liquid fuel in there, and it should have, how long of a burn time is that? 55-second burn with 1208 meters per second. This is at altitude of 0, so I want this to be over Kerbal. So over Kerbal at altitude of 0, yeah. So this is a lot of delta V. That looks good. So at this point, what I want to do is I want to put in some power. So we do something kind of like that. There we go. Nice and cheap. And then we need some sort of a lifter. So I'd put in a TD12 decoupler. This is a little too much of a decoupler, but it'll do. And then as far as the fuel tanks go, I'm thinking like a T400 and then a swivel. How would that do? 14, 16 meters per second. Really, really high thrust to weight. So we might want to thrust limit this down a little bit, down to be... Huh. Oh, there we go. There it adjusted. 1.6, like that. So the question is, will this make it up into orbit? And I mean, this shroud is kind of awful. Can we turn off the shroud on this? It's in the compact mode with the white shroud. I'd like to have no shroud, but that's not really an option. So we'll just do it like this. It doesn't look great, but it doesn't need to. So the question is, does this get up into a reasonable orbit, right? So I want to target an orbit of probably something around, I'm thinking like 150 kilometers. As long as this initial stage gets it up high enough to get it into orbit, we'll have plenty of delta V. So I'm not very concerned about that. The question is this a simulation launch? Honestly, I kind of think no. So SAS on, throttle up, and off we go. It's a awkward sort of vehicle, no doubt about it. A fairing down here would be pretty ideal. But that's not really an option right now. So let's just lift this guy right on up. What's our current thrust to weight here? Okay, noted. So all we need to do is get a decent amount through the atmosphere here and get ourselves a good amount of vertical speed. Let's hop into maneuver mode here, where we can keep an eye on our apoapsis. And I'm keeping an eye on our fuel here as well. So I'm just trying to go relatively straight up right now and get fairly high up in the atmosphere before we run out of fuel in this stage. Okay. Well, that's awkward. Noted. Fins are useful even on this design. So we burned out basically all of our speed there. I am going to pull this back. I mean, I said that this wasn't a simulation flight. It's 2,000 money, right? So we can open up the cheat menu here. This is like 3,000 actually, and we can just do, and there we go. That'll be a little bit faster for purposes of just, you know, speed. So that's okay. And we can definitely put some fins on this. I want really, really cheap ones. Delta Deluxe winglets are a little bit more than we'd really like. We could go with just basic fins. They don't have a control surface. We could do just a pair of Delta Deluxe winglets, like this. It does increase the cost quite a bit. Or we could go for something much cheaper, which would be like quad basic fins, like this, with the idea just being, let's not have that instability. I'm also going to bump this up to 50% thrust. I want a little bit higher on the acceleration. So we'll try something about like that. And is this one a simulation flight? I should probably say it is. I will say, though, my general rule with simulation flights is they are revertible, but they're also graduatable. So we can graduate them from being a simulation flight for the purpose of time. So let's take off here, and we're definitely a little faster off the pad. That looks good. So this means that we're going to build up more speed through this lower atmosphere, and we'll punch up through the atmosphere a little more quickly. That's the idea, anyway. So with these basic fins on here, I don't expect them to give us any steering, but the idea behind them is to just increase our stability a little bit. That was a pretty unstable situation that we found ourselves in, so that's fine. But yeah, with a little bit higher thrust to weight, we can see we're definitely building up a lot more speed here, and that's good. Okay, what's our current apoapsis? Noted. I'm wondering what the thrust to weight here is. Oh, that's plenty. Okay. So just continue to burn out this stage. And there we go. Did this fire? No, it didn't. That was the issue. I was like, hang on a moment. Our thrust to weight was like 3. But yeah, there we go. So at this point, we need to be heading over here, and this doesn't have the fins on it. We should maybe actually move the fins. Does this have the ability to gimbal? I don't think it does. Okay, we got it under control. Ish. Emphasis on the ish. This thing really wants to point downward. Okay, now it really wants to point the wrong direction. Just completely retrograde. There we go. We got it largely under control. Looks good. So our apoapsis is high enough at this point, and I just want to hold us about here. We're having a really hard time holding this attitude at the current juncture. It really doesn't want to hold this attitude, but it should be fine. So let's just burn here until we have an apoapsis of approximately 150, although I'm looking at how much DV we have left in our current speed, and I'm thinking something isn't checking out here. I think I was lied to with our DV. Might just be because we were in atmosphere. Okay, let's pull this back. We've got some work to do on this little guy. No doubt about it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move the basic fin up top here. So we're going to have the basic fin be up here. Well, no, I'm not actually. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ditch this. We're going to take this up to a T800. We're going to double this amount of fuel. And then I'm going to keep the fins down here, like this. This should, in theory, give us about what we need, although we're going to need a little bit more thrust here. Maybe about 67, 2/3 thrust. That's still a little on the low side. What's 75% thrust? That's better. Okay. So we'll burn about like that. Let's see what this guy is like. Still doing a simulation flight here, but yeah, I really feel like I was lied to about the amount of delta V in that top stage. That did not feel like 2,600 meters per second. I'm not going to lie. Okay. I'm wondering if maybe it wasn't pulling from some of these tanks. That's a possibility. Well, let's get out of here and let's give this another go. So we should be quite a bit higher up when we run out of fuel in this stage, which that's the idea behind preventing this from tumbling. I don't want to move the fins up here if I can help it, because the fins will stabilize this through the lower atmosphere, but this is intended to be burned in vacuum anyway. So that seems reasonably fine for now. Let's just head straight up for the moment, keeping an eye on our apoapsis here. And I'm going to try a gravity turn. We'll see how it feels with these fins once we get up to about a 20-kilometer apoapsis. So this is 18, 19, and 20. Okay, this still really wants to tumble, but it's kind of okay. Wow, this thing flies really weird. Incredibly strangely. Cool. It really wants to angle straight down for some interesting reason. I'm not entirely sure what reason that is. But now we're able to resume this, but we lost a lot of momentum. And we're not able to hold this attitude either. So we clearly need to do something about this fin situation, right? I think that's what... I think we're being too cheap with it. I think we need to upgrade these to control surfaces. So with that in mind, it's fine. This is still going to be very cheap. So if we have Delta Deluxe winglets here, I'm actually going to do 3 of them. So something along the lines of this. We're still trying to be relatively economical with this, right? So let's see what that feels like. This should be a significant improvement in controllability. So we really don't want to lose that huge amount of momentum from losing attitude. That's a really, really bad thing. So let's take this off, and let's see how it feels with 3 Delta Deluxe winglets instead of 4 basic fins. The 4 basic fins definitely gave us a little bit to grab onto in terms of our turning, but this is going to give us control surfaces in it, and that's going to be very significant. I would have done 2, but if we picked up some awkwardness, 2 could be a problem. 3 is a much safer number. So that'll do for now. And we're at 10-kilometer apoapsis. 12. 14. Continuing to accelerate upwards. 18, 19, and 20. Oh, this is so much more stable. Okay, let's flip this over into orbital velocity here. And I'm just keeping an eye on our time to apoapsis as we turn here. Time to apoapsis is still increasing at the moment. Holding. Okay, now it's going down. I'm going to hold here. Holding. Going up. Cool. I'm going to hold here until this is burnt out. Okay. In that case, we may have to change our ascent trajectory here a bit, because this thing is really not designed for atmospheric flight. And you can see we're still pretty low in the atmosphere. So if we revert this back to launch, I'm not going to make any changes to the actual vehicle. I'm just going to change our ascent profile. If we lift this straight up and then go over, it's not an efficient ascent trajectory, but it will bring us out of the atmosphere much more quickly, and we'll at least be higher up in the atmosphere when that happens. I want to see how high up we'll be. So I'm just going to go straight up here, and we will see what we need to achieve orbit. We should have enough delta V, assuming I'm not being lied to by this number. In theory, anyway. So this time, I'm going to wait until our apoapsis is maybe around 40 kilometers before I start the pitch over. Or I guess, in this case, it's a yaw over, since we're not rolling to azimuth. But that's absolutely fine. So yeah, we're just going to burn a lot of vertical speed here. That's what we really feel like we need at this juncture. Or a longer burn in this first stage. That's a theoretical possibility too. We could definitely do it that way, but I'd prefer not to. That's a 40-kilometer apoapsis there, so let's start heading on over. I'm going to burn at about a 45-degree angle here now. Okay, now I'm going to head over directly. I'm going to sit about here. It's still not out of the atmosphere. Okay. We're just coasting for the moment, but we fire this guy up, right? And this just immediately tumbles to retrograde like this. That's the core issue right now. Now, we're going to be going up quite a lot, and we can get this somewhat under control here now. Yeah, it really likes to tumble over to retrograde, but this is manageable at this altitude. So that seems okay. We're going to need to build up our horizontal speed quite a lot. And I want to check in on this fuel. Okay, so it's draining fuel from all of these tanks. Noted. I think we need a little bit more fuel in that first stage, or we need a second stage. One or the other. But let's see what we end up at here. This is 153. Actually, I think we've got plenty of fuel. So if we come up to the apoapsis over here, and we look to circularize this, not quite like that. Something about like this or so. There we go. That should do the trick. So we would just head over to this point. Are we in space yet? Not quite. Now we are. Okay, cool. So our electric charge is absolutely fine. That'll be no problem. And we will commence this burn in about 5 minutes. So we're just going to get our orbital velocity at about 150 here. And our next will be a lot lower. We're going to be targeting like 70 or 80. For our next. So that looks fine. We'll commence this burn in just a few seconds here. Okay. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, mark. Okay, that's good enough. So yeah, this is more than enough DV this time. So that looks good. That's definitely the ascent trajectory we should bring then. So we'll head back to the Space Center. We don't need to revert this. That can graduate from a simulation flight. And this next one will not be a simulation flight. Excellent. So yeah, we just needed to get a little bit higher up so that our reaction wheel would be able to overpower the aerodynamic forces. That's absolutely fine. So we'll launch a second one of these, and we're going to be targeting a much lower orbit for this one. Like I said, probably about 75 to 80 kilometers would be our target. So that's going to be a little bit more tricky to achieve. We'll see. But let's go ahead and get this guy on out of here. And the reason that's going to be more tricky is because of our awkward aerodynamics on this. Now, we're not planning on utilizing these for anything else. This is just for completion of this contract, right? We just need to park within range of each other and kill relative speed. So that'll be fine. So up we go here. And we're going to want a little bit of horizontal speed. So I'm just going to put us about right here. This is very, very, very stable at this point, but I'm just going to park us about here. Just a very small amount of horizontal speed. So we'll hold here, and let's see what happens with our apoapsis right now. 20. Excellent. So once again, around 40, we'll start a full-on gravity turn here. So this is 35 and 40. Excellent. So let's move this over. I'm going to park us for the moment at 45. Time to apoapsis is increasing. Okay. Yep, I'm just going to hold here for the moment. And we're going to stage and try to hold attitude. And that's basically a failure for now. Let's bring this right on around if we can. Not quite yet. We're not able to quite overpower these forces. There we go. Now we're able to. This is very awkward, no doubt about it. And let's fire up the engine here. And I'm going to be burning purely horizontally at this juncture. We need to get our apoapsis up to about 75 kilometers is the target that I'm going to go for. So 75 kilometers will be achieved very shortly here. We just need a lot of horizontal speed. 72, 73, 74, and 75. Engine shut down. And let's grab this guy. And we're just going to look to circularize this. Sure. This'll do. So we're going to burn that in 1 minute, 28 seconds. Okay, we are losing some altitude here because of atmospheric drag. We're not out of the atmosphere yet. That's fine. So for the time being, I want to warp over to this. The fastest we can go currently is 2x because we're still in atmosphere. We'll be out of the atmosphere shortly, so that looks good. Okay, now we're almost out of the atmosphere. Why did it drop us out of warp there? That was odd. And I can't hit this button anymore. Oh, because we're too close. Gotcha. 40 seconds, 30, 20, 10, and adjusting our heading a little bit. 3, 2, 1, 0, mark. It's always weird that there's a 0th second in there, and I forget about that occasionally. Okay. We're just about to where we want to be. I'm going to just do a little bit of burn here. This is technically in orbit. This is good enough. So that'll be fine for now. And we can see we are now in a separate orbit from this guy, which we can set as our target. And we can see we're 0.7 degrees off. I don't care about that right now. So if we were to burn sometime around here, right? And we were to look to cross this, you can see we're going to be pretty far apart in our intersect if we did this right now. So instead, what I want to do is I want to add an orbit, and that's close. Okay, so if we pin that 10.6 kilometers, we can probably dial that in a little bit. Okay, let's see what we've got here. 10.6 still. Yeah, not this direction. Let's just set these to be 0 and 0 again. And it looks like we're just going to want to do a little bit of prograde and retrograde tuning potentially, or just a get closer burn once we get there. Yeah, I see 10.4. This is about the best we're going to do for now. So that sounds good. We can definitely work on that a little bit more once we get there. So this is going to be 55.7 meters per second, and we can warp right on around here. So 10.4 kilometers is pretty close, but we'll definitely work on getting closer. I also want to move this over into target mode. There we go. And our relative speed is only going to be 40 meters per second, so we'll have plenty of fuel here. We'll probably deorbit both of these as well, just to clean them up after we're done with this, or we could just untrack them, but I think we'll deorbit them. That's funner. So we've got about 50 seconds until this burn. It's now about 10, and 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, just going to get this last little bit here. Overshot that quite a bit, actually. So let's bring this back over this way. Very, very minute burns. There we go. That'll do it. So 10.4 kilometers, that sounds good. Let's warp to about here. Okay, so we can see that the target and the retrograde marker are there. I want to warp a little bit closer to about here. So this is anti-target, and this is retrograde. Cool. We're going to need to kill this relative momentum, but we're going to need to push these nodes together. So taking a look at what we've got here, this is the anti-target node, this is the retrograde node. That means that we want to burn out over this direction just a little bit. And you can see this separation getting closer. Okay. We're going to lose efficiency here eventually. Yeah, you can see the separation is going up at this point. So I'm going to warp here. We're going to warp in a little bit closer. And we're going to need to get a little bit more of a correction done here. So that seems absolutely fine. So this is the location of anti-target. This is the location of target. We're going to push together by burning about here. So that seems fine for now. Our relative speed is pretty low at this moment. I'm just going to push these guys both completely together at the moment. Good enough. That'll do for now. So we're back up to 10.3, and that's fine. We're going to want to come around over to this side, and I want to burn towards the target a little bit here. That's going to bring these significantly closer together at the cost of a little bit of relative speed, but we have lots of fuel. So this is fine for the moment. I'm just burning towards target. So a little bit of a get closer burn here. We appear to be losing some efficiency on that. We're definitely losing some efficiency there. Okay, so let's then come out over this direction, and we're going to do a bit of a retrograde burn about here or so. Still getting a little closer. We're just pushing these nodes right together. There we go. That'll do for now. Back around to the prograde node. Well, actually, no, this is fine for the moment. 0.8 kilometers, I'm going to warp us in slightly closer. We'll warp in about a minute. You can see these drift apart, and that's due to our current separation. So that seems fine. I still want to be burning on the retrograde side. So we'll just bring this together. Half a kilometer apart now. That'll do, 0.2 kilometers. Excellent. So this is looking very, very good now. I want to warp a little further forward, only about 30 seconds or so. You can see these are still drifting a little bit. Okay, let's just put these nodes right back together for the time being. 0.0, that's looking good. So now we're going to sit right on the retrograde node, and we can start dropping that relative speed down. And yes, this is going to take us longer to get there. That's understood. I'm going to drop this relative speed down to about 10 meters per second for right now. We might, yeah, we're going to have to do another corrective burn. That's understood. But I want to drop this to about 10 meters per second. So that looks okay. As far as a small correction goes, we can do a burn right up over about here. There we go. That looks good for now. And let's coast in a little closer. Apparently we succeeded the contract, but this isn't close enough for my taste. So we're going to wait a little longer, and let's just bring this down to about here or so. Just a very, very small course correction there. And then we can take a look at where our target is. It's right there, about 300 meters away. And I definitely feel like we need to increase the size of some of these UI elements. Let's see. I forget where the 4K SP options are. I think that might be on the main menu. I think I might actually have to... Hang on. This is on the stock bar. Both. Okay. Sure. I don't actually see it in here. But... okay. That's fine for now. I'm just keeping an eye on our current positioning here. We're about 130 meters out. If you can't read that, I apologize. I will have this larger by the time next episode starts. I'll do that right after this. So we're down to about 70 meters. 50 meters. I'm going to cut our throttle a little bit, or rather cut our relative speed a little bit. Adjusting our heading ever so slightly. We're about 25 meters away. And continuing to coast right on in. 15 meters. Okay. Very, very minute changes at this point. I'm going to thrust limit this down to like 25% thrust. And there we go. We're 10 meters away. This is good enough. And yeah, I'm happy with that. Synchronized free falling indeed. We're basically stable next to each other at this point. Excellent. So we can then deorbit these guys nice and easily. We'll just hop over to here. And we deorbit this like so. So we can see our periapsis dropping, and we are deorbited now. That's good enough. And then we'll come over to this guy. Same thing. We don't need these anymore. So let's deorbit those. Cool. So both of these are now deorbited. Everything is good. They will burn up in the atmosphere most likely. That's exactly what we want them to do. So it is time to put a cut in here, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and next episode we'll see what lies in store for us in the contract space, because we've got some more work to do on that front. No doubt about that. You can leave your offerings to the engagement gods in the form of likes, comments, subscribes, and bell ringings, and a very special thank you to all of the channel members for making this video possible, including ALS Gamer, Dark Horse, Ethan Feldman, Upper Cumberland Gamers, Nick Smarty, Dimitri H, Punching the Microphone, The Lounge STL, and all the rest. And of course, you. Thank you for watching. If you'd like to support the channel, you can click the join button down below the video. And as always, I will see you all next time.